All together to order the study sessions of the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge for March the 7th, 2022. Thank you for joining us. For the record, will note that all of our councilors are here. Thank you, councilors. It's good to see everybody sort of having popped out of their squares. So, and in life, real life tonight. So, thank you. We have two business items on our study session tonight. First, we have a report from the Community First Foundation on all of the great things they do in our community. And then we have item number two is a update from our Race and Equity Task Force. And we want to thank everyone that's joining us from the committee and all the members of the public who are here to listen to our proceedings also. And as is our regular practice at City Council and study sessions, we take public comment first thing. And so if you are a member of the public and would like to speak tonight on any item that is on the agenda, this is the time you may do so. I don't believe I had anyone signed up to speak. But do we have anybody here in the hall that would like to speak that hasn't signed up? Or do we have anybody online? Because we're still a double-breasted operation, right? Okay. It looks like we don't have anybody raising their hand to speak, so we will go to we'll close that portion and go to a report on Community First Foundation. And I'm really pleased to welcome Kelly Duncan, who is the CEO of the Community First Foundation. We appreciate having you here to tell us about the great things your organization does. So I will yield the floor.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Can everyone hear me okay? Is it okay? A little closer? Yeah? There we go. Okay. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm Kelly Duncan with Community First Foundation and would love the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the work that we're doing in Jefferson County. I have a presentation, but I imagine you might have questions. I'm fine if you interrupt me and ask questions as we go along. So I will start with Community First Foundation is a community foundation. So that means we do two primary things. On one side, we help donors, whether they're individuals or organizations or businesses, create what I think of as charitable giving accounts. And then on the other side, we make grants to nonprofit organizations, and our focus is on Jefferson County. So our purpose is to make good happen. Our vision is that all of Jeffco is thriving, and how we do this work is we connect people, ideas, and nonprofits to make good happen. We're also very proud that we were the originators, and we continue to run coloradogives.org that we use to power Colorado Gives Day every year. So our values are really what undergird how we work with each other and with the community. So I'll quickly tell you about them because they're really important to us. It's empathy, keep learning, help each other thrive, do the right thing, and make something better today. So around empathy, we believe that the best communication starts by listening. So we were absolutely committed to listening to the community to understand the issues that are most important to you so that we can structure our grant making around those issues. Around keep learning, we know that we don't have all the answers. We will never have all the answers. So we're committed to sharing what we learn, sharing our successes, sharing our defeats, and doing it all over again. And then around helping each other thrive, we're better together. So how can we work together with community partners to actually ensure that all of Jeffco is thriving? And then doing the right thing, we're going to hold ourselves to the highest ethical standards. We know that this means that it's not always the easiest thing to do, but we will continue to do the right thing. And then finally, make something better today. We set really lofty long-term goals, but like the journey of 1,000 steps begins with the first step. We're going to look at what we can do to make something better today. And our values are what we like to say we hire and fire upon, but we're also committed to two other things that are really, really important to us. Joy in the workplace, supporting our community, actually three, supporting our communities, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I love that you have someone presenting on that tonight, because we are also looking at how can we make sure we have representation with our staff, how can we make sure we have representation in the input that we're getting from the community, and then what can we do to dismantle systemic racism and really work towards building a more inclusive and equitable community in Jefferson County. so very committed to that and are on that learning journey with many other organizations. So our work. As I mentioned, we kind of have two sides of the house. We've got the side where we help donors, and we've got the side where we help nonprofits. So on the donor side, we have what we think of as giving tools. So if you're an individual and you want to create what's called a donor advised fund, you can create one with us. You open the fund with us, and then you advise us on where you would like to make grants. And if you want advice on where to make grants, we can do that. I was just talking to Janice that one of our donors was really interested in women's issues, so we were thrilled to connect her to Porchlight, and she then made a large grant to Porchlight. So that's what we can do for individuals. We can also help corporations, everything from creating a corporate giving account where the corporation then makes grants to nonprofits, to training their employees how you get grant requests in to then make grants to nonprofits, to really engaging employees in giving. And we can also do corporate sponsorships of Colorado Gives Day. So if you work for a company who wants some great PR and wants to support over 3,100 nonprofits in the state, let me know. We'd love to have you be part of Colorado Gives Day. And then we also provide educational events. We just had one last week where we shared our investment returns for all of the funds that we steward on behalf of organizations. And then on the nonprofit side, we do everything from capacity building with making Colorado Gives, this online giving platform, free to nonprofit organizations, to making grants to Jefferson County nonprofits. We also will do endowments. So if a nonprofit is lucky enough to have sufficient reserves or sufficient money that they can invest for their long-term sustainability, we can manage that endowment on their behalf. So right now we're proud to have about 135 nonprofits who trust us with their endowments. We pull those endowments, we invest on their behalf, giving them a ton of administrative and financial acumen and security. And then we also have fundraising tools. I think our biggest is coloradogives.org. I apologize if you know what it is, but quickly for those who may not know, I think of it as an online dating platform, but for donors and nonprofits. So on the platform, we have 3,100 nonprofit organizations. We vet every one of those nonprofits to know that they have their designation from the IRS and they're in good standing with the Secretary of State. So then when a donor comes to the site to find the nonprofit they care about, they can rest assured that they're giving to a qualified nonprofit organization and their donation will be tax deductible. So that's what coloradogives.org is. We use that platform to power the second largest giving day in the nation, Colorado Gives Day. And we also use the platform to offer educational events to help nonprofits. And we provide access to unique partnerships. So one example is a Catch a Fire platform. I'm going to use the dating analogy again. This is a platform that connects professionals who want to donate their services to finish a project that a nonprofit needs help on. So we make that available to many of our nonprofit partners for free. So our fundraising. So Colorado Gives, we've talked about what coloradogives.org is, where you can search as a donor, nonprofits in a geographic area. You can search by zip code. If you just care about Wheat Ridge and want to give to Wheat Ridge, we have Wheat Ridge nonprofits. If you want to search by key term, maybe you care about animal rights, you can search by animal rights. Quickly, just looking at 2021, we're really proud that over the course of the year, I think a lot of people think that Colorado Gives is just one day a year on Colorado Gives Day, but it actually runs 365 days a year, and $79 million was donated through the platform and went immediately out to over 3,200 nonprofits in 2021. And if you just look at the growth over the years of coloradogives.org, we're very proud of that. I won't walk you through all of that. And then Colorado Gives Day, I think we had an incredible year in 2020. We raised $50 million on behalf of Colorado nonprofits in 2020. We thought there is no way we will see that again. Pandemic was in a different place, and maybe people had discretionary income that they could then use to go on vacations or go out. And Coloradans stepped up again and absolutely blew us away with their generosity. $55 million was donated on Colorado Gives Day in 2021.
Kelly,
Yeah.
do a lot of those dollars stay in Jefferson County?
I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but some of them do, absolutely. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the grants we make from our funds in Wheat Ridge specifically.
Thank you.
But we could absolutely do things to support Jefferson County with that giving platform, we can create what we call super campaigns, where we would list all of the Jeffco nonprofits that want to participate, and we could do something outside of Colorado Gives Day to support the Jeffco nonprofits. Thank you for asking. And then this is just the growth. Absolutely amazes me in Colorado Gives Day since we started. I always like to point out the very first when we launched coloradogives.org was in 2007. And that was the year the very first iPhone came out. And it was also when we were still renting movies from Blockbuster. And so at the time, people were they were barely shopping online, and no one was making donations online. And I can brag about this because I had nothing to do with it. But my predecessors at Community First Foundation were really prescient. They really knew that things were going to move to online giving, and they wanted to make it easy and far cheaper for nonprofits to create that infrastructure. So really proud of the growth that we've seen in Colorado Gives. And mark your calendars. It's coming up, December 6th, 2022, Colorado Gives Day. And then I talked about the endowments. This is just the benefit of an endowment. It is a way for a nonprofit to really support their long-term needs, and they get an annual distribution from the endowment that supports short-term plans. So if you're on the board of a nonprofit, you know of a nonprofit who wants to talk about creating an endowment, we'd love to do that. We also heard, I said one of our values is being empathetic and listening. We heard from nonprofits that in this environment, they're very worried about locking away money forever in perpetuity, which an endowment requires you to do. So we've also launched what we call a long-term designated fund. So same benefits of an endowment, we'll invest it on your behalf, but it's not restricted in perpetuity. And if everything goes wrong, God forbid, someone could pull out that money and have access to it pretty quickly. So something else we're offering. So our community impact. We'll talk a little bit about Wheat Ridge. So in Jefferson County, our vision is that all of Jeffco is thriving. So we've identified some impact areas that we work in, and the first is essential needs. And our thought is it's really hard to thrive when you can't meet your essential needs on safe and affordable housing, adequate nutritious food, and access to healthcare services. And when we say healthcare services, we include behavioral and dental healthcare services in that. So we support efforts that ensure that Jefferson County residents can meet their essential needs. We also work in economic prosperity, and our thought there is we all do better when we all do better. So how can we help Jefferson County residents get, keep, and maybe even create good paying jobs? So everything from quality early childhood education, because we know the long-term impact that has on people's earning potential, to upskilling and reskilling for those jobs that may be automated or may be going away, so that people can provide for themselves, and if they have a family, for their family. So that's what we do around economic prosperity. Then we're looking at resilient and connected neighborhoods. So there's been a lot of research on what they call social cohesion. So me feeling connected to my neighbors is one of the biggest predictors of someone's ability to thrive. So that social cohesion, that connectedness of neighbors is really, really important. So we're looking at how can we support neighbor-driven efforts to make neighborhoods safe, more welcoming, more inclusive, and maybe even a little more fun. And then finally, civic engagement. We know that the best communities are built by people who take an active role in building the civic life of their community. So how do we help people get, strengthen, or even develop skills that will allow them to play a role in their civic community? So those are the 4 impact areas that we work in. And here's some grants that we're very proud to have made in Wheat Ridge in 2021. We sponsored the Carnation Festival, so we had a booth at the Carnation Festival. That was a lot of fun. We've also worked the Outdoor Lab Foundation. We made a grant to the city of Wheat Ridge looking at those resilient and connected neighborhoods around your efforts to support safer, more thriving neighborhoods. We've done a couple of grants with Jefferson Center for Mental Health that has a site here in Wheat Ridge. And then finally, Advancing Warriors International and Local Works, which is also working to really build up the community voice. And I'm really proud that we have invested that we're going to invest $9.4 million in grants just this year, all in Jefferson County. And that's a 250% increase from 2019 in the investments that we plan to make in Jefferson County. and last year it was $6 million. So making good happen. We would love for you to engage with us on this journey to make good happen in Jefferson County and Wheat Ridge. So if you know a nonprofit, if you know a business, if you know a donor, we'd love to connect with them and find ways that we can work together to make this happen. So with nonprofits, if you're on a nonprofit board or you happen to work for a nonprofit, you can share with us what you're seeing in the community that we should be focused on. We're absolutely committed to listening and learning. We don't want to get so enamored with our work that we fail to stay relevant to what's really happening in communities. If we have an open funding opportunity and you think that your nonprofit fits, please apply. We want to make sure that we're investing in strong nonprofits in JEFCO. You can enroll, coloradogives.org. It's open enrollment now. Nonprofits can go and get on the site so they can participate 365 days a year, but they can also be a part of Colorado Gives Day, December 6th this year. And then you can open an endowment or long-term designated fund if you happen to have those resources. In terms of individual giving, you can support a nonprofit on coloradogives.org by making a donation. You can also create fundraising pages to support your favorite nonprofit. One of the things we've seen people do if they're running a race and they want to raise money for leukemia and lymphoma, they can create a fundraising page and share it in their networks via social media. You can also, if you're in a position to have discretionary income that you'd like to do so, we welcome you to work with us to open a donor advised fund. Often people use those in lieu of a family foundation to really bring along their children, their siblings, their extended family to really engage in philanthropy. So that's also an opportunity. And finally, if you work for a company, we'd love to have them participate in Colorado Gives Day. And then finally, organizations and businesses, same thing. You can support nonprofits on coloradogives.org. You can open a giving account for your business. And we have a whole corporate engagement menu that we can share with you on different levels of services that we can provide. And finally, you can ask your company to participate in corporate giving and perhaps even sponsor the incentive fund for Colorado Gives Day. So a preview of what's to come. So Patrick has heard a lot about our housing study, but one of the things we're looking at in economic prosperity is called a career impact bond. And it's a funding mechanism that at its core is a really student-friendly income share agreement. So we're starting with computer user support. We did a lot of research to say, what are those jobs that you don't need a bachelor's degree for, pay $40,000 a year, so a livable wage, you can get training for in a year or less, and seem to be recession resistant. So there always seem to be jobs available, and you see those advertised regularly. So computer user support, that sort of help desk support that you see in companies, was one of them. So we're going to launch with computer user support. The way it works is we'll have a training provider who provides the training. And we'll say to the training provider, we'll give you 50% of the cost of training for this cohort of students, all of whom are currently living in poverty. So qualify for public benefits, may have been incarcerated and are re-entering the community, or qualify for the earned income tax credit. So you get 50% to train these students. You will get the rest of that money once that student graduates and gets a job paying $40,000 a year. So aligning incentives, it's not just enough to give them the training, we also have to get those individuals into jobs. And then you, as the individual who gets the job, you will then start paying back the bond. You'll pay at 100% of the cost. You don't have to pay more, no interest. You have 4 years. If you don't get a job for 2 years, you only pay back for 2 years, and we cap the amount that you pay each year. So we're not moving someone from poverty into being indebted forever for this training. So getting ready to launch that, hopefully in April. If anyone has a company who's looking to hire people in computer user support, we'd love to talk to you ahead of time so we can get good candidates to be interviewed. The next thing we're looking at is when we think about essential needs, housing is huge, and there's nowhere that we can go where we're not hearing about how inaffordable it is to live, not just in Jefferson County, but the metro area, but in particular in Jefferson County. So we launched a study, it should be done in early April, where we looked at who is currently being priced out of the market. And we think there's probably 3 different categories. Those who are unhoused, individuals who you might refer to as homeless, those who are living on 50% of area median income or below, And then those individuals at about 50 to almost 120% of area median income who could no longer afford to live in Jefferson County. So I think of those as civil servants, teachers, nurses, radiology techs. So they're also being priced out of the market. So we're looking at how do we quantify who falls into those buckets, what's currently underway to help meet their needs, and where are the gaps, and what could we as a community foundation do to help address some of those gaps. So that should be released in April. Would love to talk to others about that. We're looking at not just grant funding for that. I think of grant funding to solve affordable housing a little bit like boiling the ocean. So we have an endowment, and we make investments all the time from that endowment. How can we take a portion of that endowment and invest to help create more affordable housing stock in Jefferson County? So that's what we're looking at. No decisions yet on what that's going to look like, but we're also looking at the Lutheran Legacy Campus and what can happen there. So excited that I know you guys have been talking about that as well. And then finally, impact investing. So I talked about perhaps using our endowment to do some impact investing in housing, but we're also doing one right now with Jefferson County Public Schools to increase graduation rates for individuals who are in the foster system. So that Pay for Success program. And then we have a Metro Denver nonprofit loan fund. So looking at nonprofits throughout the metro area who were impacted by COVID, saw their revenues decline, and we have created a loan fund that helps them build a capital stack that includes grant funding, that may include some government grants, but also includes a no interest loan that can help them build credit worthiness. And we're really focused on nonprofits that are either BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color led, or serving. And there's information on the website, Metro Denver Nonprofit Loan Fund, if anyone is interested in learning more. So I've talked at you a lot. And I would love to hear suggestions you have for us, ideas you have for us, or any questions you might have.
Well, Kelly, thank you very much. We'll let you get a sip of water if you need some. We'll get you some, or take a break, and we'll go to questions. So, Councilor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for being here, Kelly. Two quick things. So, first off, the career impact. You guys are looking at computer users. Have you considered looking at the trades at all? Because that environment has really very low inventory of employees, and it is something that, there are several trades where you could go to school for 8 months and then you could be working towards, and even ones that will take you from journeyman all up to, or apprentice all the way up to master, and you could be making a significant amount of money in several years later. So.
Yeah, it's absolutely on the list. We're putting in $2 million to prove the model. Then we hope to work with others to get perhaps some ARPA funds to keep this going, this evergreen fund that can continually turn over. So we're building some systemic changes on how we're training for those careers. Great. So absolutely. The other one we're looking at is heavy truck driving.
Mm-hmm. And then my other question is, can you speak about what the incentive fund is? I think I know what it is, but
thank you for asking. Thank you. Sometimes I forget that not everyone lives and breathes Colorado Gives Day like we do. So on Colorado Gives Day, our founding corporate partner is First Bank. And one of the things that First Bank and Community First Foundation does is seed an incentive fund. So we seed it with the first $1 million, and last year was the first year we opened it up to other corporate sponsors, and we grew it to about $1.6 million. And what it does is it just boosts every donation made on Colorado Gives Day, and it's done on a percentage basis. So if Porch Light were to raise 10% of all that was raised on Colorado Gives Day, they'd get 10% of the incentive fund. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. Additional questions? Councilor Pultine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, first of all, that was an extraordinary presentation. I mean, it was a good presentation technically, but the amount of work and the impact you're having in the community and statewide is just mind-boggling. I knew a little bit, but I don't think I was prepared for just the extent that you're doing, but the approach that you're taking to serving our community is just incredible, and it's really obviously led with the listening, and I'm excited to learn more. An easy ask is, how can we be notified when the housing study is released?
Yeah, I will make sure that Patrick has it. And we're building out a whole communication strategy because I think there's a lot of education that we're hoping is going to happen with the housing study. And so I'll make sure I get it into your hands. And if there's a presentation that you want based on the housing study, would love to talk to you about that.
Wonderful, I appreciate that. And I saw a little exchange between Patrick and Ally when you were talking about the new workforce development program, and hopefully the city will consider looking at that program for our own hiring. Very
Yeah.
exciting. You also, last year, I think it was last year, I don't know, the last 2 years are kind of squished
It's all a
together. You guys had a phenomenal catalytic grant program around local food systems, and I was fortunate enough to sit on the grant review committee for that.
Thank
And,
you.
it was just really exciting to see when that much money is put towards addressing a specific issue that affects our whole county, how much impact it can have. And by convening all of the different nonprofit organizations that are addressing food security, I noticed out of the pooling that there was the opportunity to help different organizations kind of collaborate where they had similar asks. And so, just operating at the scale that you do, but also being able to touch on so many different organizations, it's an effective way in our community to
Thank
work.
you.
And I do believe you guys provided some funding for our community fridge at Wheat Ridge Poultry. Is that correct? Yeah. So that's something I'm really proud is in our community, and thank you for providing substantial funding to make that happen.
Thank you. And I'm going to be sure, I know our staff, Mary Beth, was very engaged in that, so I'm going to share the compliments with her because it was her work on the house and the food security.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Councilor Noslerback?
Just because, like Councilor Hulteen said, the presentation was awesome.
Thank you.
I really like that Jefferson County graphic.
You may borrow
I
it.
kind of want to hang it in my office or at my house. I don't know. It was really cool. But there's a lot of information, and I just had a question. So with the housing study, sounds like there's a comms plan that's going to come out. Did you say it was, I got the, AMI levels, but then the 50, is it 50 to 120 AMI? Okay. And then is the plan that the, investments and stuff will be tied to the study? That's how those grants would be distributed? Is that, I'm just trying to make sure I understand that.
So we plan to have essentially, in full transparency, 2 versions of the study. One will be external, where we can use it to spark conversations, to spark engagement, to maybe do some education on what housing and I don't even think inaffordability is a word, but what lack of housing affordability looks like. And then we're going to have an internal one that actually recommends how we go about setting up a fund, what that fund would look like, and what portion of the problem it should address. And so that'll give us recommendations for our board to wrestle through, and then we will make that very public, what we decide to do and how we decide to go about doing that.
Great. Our community has been having some conversations about AMI and where that fits. I'm hopeful that when this study comes out, it'd be great to have you back to share out
I would
on
love
that.
to.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Councilor Weaver?
Thank you so much for your presentation. I too, like several people here, did not realize the giant impact that was being made. My first question is a silly one. Who's the first biggest giving day? Because I had no idea
know.
Colorado. Or
So-
should I not ask that?
No, you can ask. I'm not competitive. It's North.
I am, so I'm going to
Yeah,
ask.
so it's North Texas. But they include a lot of things that we don't include in our giving. We're more purists. So if we really compared, we're the biggest. If we did apples to apples comparison.
No, that's just incredible. And my second question is, are there tools, or is it worthwhile, because I can see benefits or negatives to this, but I'm just thinking about Colorado Gives Day and a way that that we can kind of activate Wheat Ridge and know if Wheat Ridge was giving more than everybody else, and
Yeah,
you know,
there
so
absolutely
not to
is.
create competition again, but just curious if there were tools where we could create a community amplification of that.
There are.
Okay.
And I'm hoping we have new tools by September. So would love, I can share those with you. I can give you some ideas. We could even set up, city council competitions between Jeffco city councils.
We'd never do that.
No. Well, it's all to support the nonprofit, so I'm all about it.
Exactly. No, thank you very much. That's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. So in September, we should have some new tools and we can share with you what those are and how you could get engaged. Thank you. I'd love that.
Thank you. Questions, Councilor Dozeman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Kelly, for your presentation. So I recently joined the Lutheran Medical Center Foundation as their director of major gifts, and I know that Community First Foundation and Lutheran partner a lot. And you mentioned the Legacy Lutheran campus. Could you maybe expand on that comment a little bit, or?
Yeah, so I think, thank you very much. And in full transparency, I didn't give you our history, but we started as the Lutheran Medical Center Foundation. So we have a long history with Lutheran Medical Center. So I was lucky enough to be on the advisory committee for the Legacy campus. And I think when we look at development in Jeffco, it's hard not to think about what's possible with the Legacy campus. And I think even the recommendations that came from the advisory council, and I think what you all are thinking about, we would love to support the efforts around mixed use on that campus with some commitments that portions of the campus are designated for workforce or income aligned housing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I really appreciated you bringing up the 50% to 120% AMI being priced out of Jefferson County. I don't think people really realize the impact and what kind of people fall within that range, and we're talking middle class.
Absolutely. We're talking the individuals who teach our kids.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Additional questions or discussions? Great topic, great presentation. I want to tell you, you sort of nailed it. Councilor Hilteen.
So I am competitive, and I love your idea about pitting Jefferson County councils against each other for fundraising competitions. So thank you for just blurting that out, and I will not forget that. So
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. One of the things that got me involved initially in the city was advocating for bike lanes on our main street, and since then I've gotten involved in different types of transportation advocacy, and through my other job with Bicycle Colorado, one of the initiatives we're really looking at is equitable access to transportation as a quality of life metric. A lot of people, either they don't have a vehicle in their household, or they're restricted to one vehicle with 3 jobs. And so I'm just curious if your organization has really looked at transportation as one of the metrics for your focus area. I can't remember the exact name of it, but just looking at like quality of life issues, because actually access to healthcare is a lot of times impeded by being able to get to transit. And by the time you get to Jefferson County, the investments in like a good transit system in terms of having, regular service that is running at, atypical hours if people aren't working a typical 9-to-5 job. Is that something you guys have looked at all in terms of like how that's a factor for people?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, one of the things we're committed to do is listening. So we take all those needs assessments that other organizations do and consider that part of our listening, not just what we hear directly. And as we look at what prevents people from getting good paying jobs, from sometimes even taking jobs, transportation is a huge issue, especially in some of the more rural areas of Jefferson County. So while we haven't made any direct investments in improving transportation, we absolutely look at what are some of the ways that nonprofits that are serving individuals can improve their ability to access transportation or to provide transportation to older adults to get to medical clinics, to single mothers. We do Hands of the Carpenter, who are looking at fixing cars at very low income if they don't have the money. But in terms of a big policy push and really looking more holistically, we haven't done that yet, but that's an interesting comment that we should be looking at.
Great, well, if you want to talk more, it's one
Okay.
of my favorite topics, so, okay,
Thanks.
great, thank you again for your time. Yeah, really.
All right, any other questions? Well, Kelly, thank you very much for
Thank
joining us
you.
tonight. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate what Community First Foundation does for Jefferson County, for the city of Wheat Ridge, and for all of our lives. So,
Well, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for your commitment, for being civil servants. This is how we talk about civic engagement, and I appreciate you having me here tonight.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Before we go to our second item, I would like to take a brief moment and bring Ali Sheck into the conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Stalka. Thank you, and thanks, Mr. Goff, for this opportunity. I just wanted to introduce an absolute rock star to you all. This is Jesse Dubin. Jesse is our new IT manager. And it's,
All
I
right,
think, a really
welcome.
important position for you all to know who Jesse is. He's like, wait, I did not know this was going to happen. But this is how cool Jesse is. He actually started on Valentine's Day and spent 2 weeks working with the interim IT manager before he retired. That was Kent. You probably all remember Mike Steinke. Mike got a great opportunity in California, where he's from, and his aging parents, I hope they weren't watching when I said that, but are there. And so he's gone back to be with them and is working in the IT field. But anyway, so we're very fortunate to have Jesse. He wanted to be here tonight to sort of watch. He's been behind the scenes with other Jesse, so that we have Jesse squared, to kind of just watch how we do things here and see how he could help improve our game a little bit now that we're doing hybrid meetings. So I'll just give Jesse a second to say hi.
Hi, everybody. The first thing I learned hanging out with Jesse and Stephen in the back is to lean into the mic to an uncomfortable degree, so that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you so much for having me here and letting me meet you all. Everybody at Wheat Ridge has been very warm and welcoming, and I'm excited to be doing big and fun and cool things with you all.
Jesse comes from RTD. He was with RTD for about 16 years. Missed that. And lives in Jefferson County. So
Great.
thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Ali, and Jesse, welcome aboard, and we're glad to have you here. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go to our second agenda item. This is a Race and Equity Task Force update, and I know that we have Mary Ann Schilling and our chairs and other members of the committee, and want to thank everybody for being here to give us this update. Mary Ann, the floor is all yours.
All right, great, thank you. Good evening, I'm Mary Ann Schilling, Assistant to the City Manager, and I'm here tonight with our 3 Race and Equity Task Force co-chairs. We have Terry Gale, Jeff Richards, and Jenny Snell. As you may remember, they were here in August giving us an update of how they were getting started, and now they are here to give an update. So they are going to discuss the review so far on city services, policies, and ordinances, and then they're going to be giving a little update on the things to come. So I'm going to pass it along to the co-chairs.
All right, so I'm going to try this mic thing. It's nice to see you all in person. Thanks for having us. Good evening. My name is Jenny Snell, and I'm proud to be here representing the Race and Equity Task Force with Terry and Jeff. I'll start by giving you a bit of insight into how we got started, our first meetings, and how we began our work. First, I must commend you all for listening to our community as we express the need for this task force and the work that must be done. We are happy to represent our districts and the city of Wheat Ridge. We have a fantastic group of thoughtful, passionate citizens who have a real grasp of what we need to accomplish and have the desire to put the time in to get the work done. At the beginning, we were joined by Dr. Dwanita Mosby-Tyler and her associate Monica Williams from the Equity Project, which is a Denver-based firm specializing in EDI training and guidance for organizations. Their knowledge and recommendations really helped us to take our passion and desire for change and formulate a plan for our task force work, especially considering this is a new endeavor for the city. One of the most important points in our time with Dr. Mosby-Tyler was the process of creating an equity lens, which has helped guide our work. An equity lens is a tool used by groups like ours to guide our decision-making, usually through a set of questions The lens interrupts the impact of unintended consequences by taking into consideration the lived experiences and perspectives of racially diverse communities. Our equity lens has been a great tool for the work that we are doing. We then set to work right away reviewing our city's bylaws and charter, starting with a presentation from our city manager and city attorney. And then our schedule was set to have presentations from each city department, which Terry's going to tell you a little bit more about that, but I thought I'd just kind of kick it off with how we got started. Take it away, Terry.
Thank you, City Council, thank you for letting us present our findings, and I want to thank the entire task force for their hard work and effort throughout the year in getting this done. So what have we been up to since August? We've been putting the finishing touches on some updates and kind of formalizing what we're doing. The way we do this is we meet twice a month on Thursdays, usually, and we have had some meeting with the city staff to learn about specific topics and areas of interest, and then we take the second meeting to do some work session focusing on our 3 different groups, and we also do some research. We were grateful to have some of the folks in the city, not all of them yet, but we have them on the schedule, but some folks that's already presented to us, or the police, the courts, the homeless navigator, and community development, and Parks and Rec, just to name a few. We have on the calendar economic development, city clerk, human resources, public works, and they're all scheduled in the upcoming months. So with that being said, what we've been doing over since August, I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to Jeff to talk to you about the work that he's done with the police force.
Thanks, Terry. I just wanted to quickly add my thanks to the City Council and to the city officials for this opportunity to serve our city. I agree with Jenny and Terry completely that it's a great group, and we're doing a lot of important work, and we really are excited about presenting our report to you when we're done. There were 2 additional topics that we wanted to cover tonight that kind of fall outside the scope of what we were asked to do and what we had set out ourselves to do. The first one came around the Hotel Ordinance that the city was trying to pass. And it wasn't so much what was presented to us, it was how it was presented. And what was important about what happened here is that our group agreed that what we needed to do was to protect the integrity of the group itself. Because right now, we really don't have influence at all yet, right? We're just kind of on paper. So we wanted to be very careful about how we approach that. What happened in the end was that one of our members approached us about that ordinance outside of the overall group. In other words, it was the 3 chairs. And they did it without, it was pretty, I don't want to say aggressive, but a pretty enthusiastic approach. And then some things happened in that process that weren't announced to us when it was happening or as it unfolded. And so we did get back to the rest of the task force. We discussed it, and we agreed that because of the way those things were brought to us, they weren't necessarily bad points, but that we had to keep it fair, and that any meeting between ourselves and representatives from the hotel had to happen with someone from the city there also, with some people from the city, more than one person. And again, it was just that we really wanted to be sure that we were being fair. And I think it's important that the public know this so that they understand that we're trying to take everybody's best interests at heart. We're not siding with people. We're not siding with groups. We're just trying to keep everything on the up and up. Also, when we talk about the timing around how we're getting things done and when will things be done? These are the kinds of things that come up, not that they shouldn't, but they come up and they kind of take time away from the work that we're really trying to focus on. So that was topic number one. The second one was that we found in the process of starting to try and wrap things up for this first round that we needed a way to report to you. And so three of our members, Jenny and Millie, and actually Marion also, have been working on a template for that report, and that's important because it's going to organize uniformly all the information that you're going to get. It's going to prioritize things for you, so in other words, you should be able to see in that report what our number one, number two, number three, etc. priorities are, so that you won't have to ask or be reminded about what we really think is the most important thing or what are the most important items. And we also hope that it's cogent and that there are themes that have been running through what we've been talking about and looking at in the city's priorities and their policies, their processes. And frankly, you probably are aware of many of them, but it will also give some context to those kinds of things out and beyond each of the specific subgroups that we've been working in. So those were just two items we wanted to make you aware of, and now we'll jump into talking about each of the three current subgroups with Jenny.
Thanks, Jeff. So just a quick recap. A few things have happened since we last talked to you. Our first three topics, and these were decided by our group as a whole, are police, courts and judiciary process, and education. So that's where we get our three subcommittees from that we're talking about. I personally will be giving you an overview on the education subcommittee, and then Jeff and Terry will do theirs. So here's a little bit about our subcommittee for education. We're pretty proud to have two members that are pretty pivotal in our subcommittee, a student at Jeffco Schools and a teacher. And so we feel well equipped to dive into finding out about racial equity and inclusion work being done at the school level and at the district level. We reached out to schools that serve Wheat Ridge, all the schools, elementary all the way through high school. And we've been able to connect with several folks at the district level also. We even had a presentation from Jeffco Schools as one of the Thursday nights that we just recently had that. We've learned that this work is a priority at both the school level and the district level, and each school has staff dedicated to work in the areas of inequity, access, and advocacy for their students and families. To aid in our work, our group obtained and compiled enrollment data from each school broken down by race and ethnicity and free lunch eligibility. We have learned that in spring of 2020, Jeffco Public Schools launched a commitment to equity change model, and that's district-wide. There's also a robust list of policies at the district level that revolve around equity in the classroom, family support, school safety, and staff equity and support. Our subcommittee is compiling our final report. It'll be completed by the end of this month, and we look forward to sharing a lot more insights with you then. But I have to say this, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the curveball that was thrown to all educators with the onset of the pandemic. And with teachers having to flex their classroom lessons to entirely remote, with learning being something entirely new for everyone involved, and everything that goes with that, we certainly understand the additional time it's taken to get additional added information that we might need for our report. We owe our teachers a huge thank you, especially in these last couple of years. So I just wanted to make sure I mention that. So I'm going to hand it over to Terry. He's going to talk more about his subcommittee. There we go.
So my subcommittee, we did work around the 14th Judiciary Committee. We wanted to address the possible biases that may have directly or indirectly affected judgment, sentencing, and services officers. office of everyone in the community. We looked at the practices within the municipal court and ensured fairness from a grade and ethical standard. So none of us were attorneys or necessarily worked in law. So what we did was we met with a whole slew of legal professionals with various backgrounds and expertise. Those folks included public defenders, district attorneys from several surrounding communities. We also talked to Madeline Camp, the probation officer here, and we had a great meeting with Chris Randall, the judge. We also observed several rebridge court proceedings, and we also took a look at the municipal court 2022 budget. We were able to gain some additional knowledge by doing some readings. One of the books we read was called Justify Terrell, which is a case study of abusive practices within the Colorado court system. We participated in community DEI summit and Jefferson County Criminal Justice Reform Town Hall meetings. So, with all that, we had to get some tools and reference points to narrow our recommendations as it related to fairness in pre-trial proceedings, the reduction in citizen rates, support structures, reintegration, incarceration, and adding layers to the adult and juvenile diversion and restorative practices. So we took all that and we kind of looked at that, and that's something that we want to share with you once all this is done, to kind of help us help you get some of this done. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff and let him talk about his section.
The police subcommittee started by meeting and talking about what we wanted our priorities to be, what we were interested in, and we came up with 6 topics. The first was the required review and discussion of police policies and procedures. The second was social media policies. The third was reimagining law enforcement. The fourth was working with the community. The fifth was transparency and accountability, and the sixth was militarization of the police.
Jeff, I'm sorry, we just got a message from a citizen watching. Can you pull the mic up a little bit closer there? They can't hear you very well.
Okay. Are they going to email and tell me they can hear me now? Am I still muted? I have the worst time with meeting. Today we were in our meeting virtually, and I started talking, and I was just a talking head on screen. And like, Jeff, you're muted. So same thing. In any case, getting back to what we'll be providing you with. So when we reviewed the policies and procedures, there are, by my count, 23 sections. And by the way, those policies and procedures are posted to the City of Wheat Ridge website, up on the police's webpage, if you want to go and see those. We broke those down into the 23 sections themselves into a group of 5 or single 5 divisions, and the reason is that we originally had 5 people in our group to look at that. We got a pretty even number of pages to review doing it that way. We did eventually lose one person, and thankfully Millie took that over, those sections over. But so we broke those down, we reviewed those sections, and then we later found out that actually that was not the current set of documents. So those documents, those new policies and procedures have been posted to the website. There were, I've reviewed just a few of the sections myself, and the changes weren't total. In other words, there was not a complete wiping of a section, rewriting of it. Wording would change, or terminology would change. That in particular happened around body-worn cameras. But in any case, each of us took those sections. And so then we got together, talked about what we saw, looked at each of our citations, and we're bringing that together into a report on those policies and procedures. And once again, there are themes that run through all of those documents that you'll see us share with you. In terms of social media, we wanted to talk about some of the things that we've seen happen on the city's website, specifically on the police's page, and talk with the police about what can happen there, how to structure that maybe differently, hopefully for some more positive results, et cetera. But that was a big thing for us that seemed like it could use some refreshing. We talked about reimagining law enforcement, and that was kind of a big term, but it basically came down to the subjects around what happens, or can you reallocate funds that were used from the police department to do other things like mental health care. And by the way, I've been part of conversations with the Wheat Ridge Police Department around that subject, and at least at the upper levels, there's a willingness to discuss that in terms of, well, if somebody else can do this more efficiently, maybe that is where we should be spending that money. But it hasn't gone any farther than that. We talked about focusing on what they were good at. In other words, we started to talk about where are there incidences where we know that the police is being asked to do things that they're probably not trained for and they don't specialize in. And again, mental health came up there. We talked about working with the community. And in that case, we were just talking about things around how things are coded, because the way things get, the codes that are enforced are once again something the police have to work inside of, and so are there ways to look at those creatively, maybe restructure some of those to help our officers with their workload. Another topic that's come up many times and probably is the same, this pair of topics is probably the reason a lot of us are here, which is transparency and accountability, which of course the discussion started with the death of George Floyd. And it's a huge topic, but it's one that it's obviously there are issues there in the public around how do we share information about what's happening in our police force and what gets shared, right? So as Dr. Tyler related to us, you can't really have equity and equality without transparency and accountability. And the last one was militarization of the police, and we talked a little bit around SROs and how there does seem to be a pipeline built to that in some cases we get students who go from being in trouble in school to taking the next step out of school to getting in trouble, and then eventually they're in prison. And that seems all too common, and it also seems to be skewed way towards people of color. So those were kind of our big ideas. Those are the things that you'll see in our report. And I think we're done there. So I'm going to hand it back over to Terry to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing next.
So, thank you, Jeff. So after a hard, busy, and productive first year, we have some recommendations. We're excited to continue our joint effort with council and everyone here to strive toward making Wheat Ridge an all-American city, right? That's what we got recognized for. But we need to address that, addressing fairness and equity. So 3 things that we're going to look for in the coming year is we want to talk about property and development. that includes affordable housing and what that may or may not look like. That includes health equity, because we've all been sick, and without that, you can't get anything done. And that also includes addressing homelessness issues. My job, my paying job, addresses that directly. I'm part of a statewide initiative to become a national model if we can pull this off. And if we can do this, it's going to be great work. So those are the three things that we have coming up that we're going to work on next year, and we're asking you to, we're going to be presenting things to you, and we're asking you to, like we're doing with this first round, kind of help us help you with the funding. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Gina.
Thank you. All right. So I just want to talk for a moment about our group. You all were involved in the nomination process for your district, and we started with 20 folks. And as these things happen, we've lost a few folks to moving. Who would want to move out of Wheat Ridge? I don't know, but they did. And just a couple of folks. And then, life happens, and folks just found that it was too busy. They, kiddos or school or whatever. And so we're down to, right now, 13 members. And as Jeff mentioned, we've done a really good job of being flexible and kind of flexing, and one group will help another group with certain things as we're going along. But we found, and we're to the point where we're feeling really close to the minimum, which is 12, and that was sort of decided when we started, is 12 was our absolute minimum. And so we're coming to you today to basically say we were at 20, we're at 13, we're getting close to the bare minimum, and we would like to at least explore adding to our task force, or having a discussion around that, because with our next 3 topics, and then what is owed to you and what we will do to kind of move on to the next phase, if we had a few more folks at least to be part of the group, and we know there are lots of other folks out there that are really dedicated to this subject matter and to our community, it would certainly be helpful for all of us. So just want to throw that out there. Marianne's going to talk a little bit more about that, but that's the gist. So, and here's Marianne.
One quick thing on the reporting out, I just wanted to mention, I think Terry or Jeff mentioned it quickly, but the plan is to wrap those up officially at the end of the month, so we'll have the official recommendations. One of the reasons why it's not specific on the exact recommendations is because we're planning on meeting with the subject matter experts for staff to make sure that we have a chance to have that conversation before we give it to the city council. So hold tight for that piece. And then what Jenny mentioned is that we are looking for council direction tonight on reopening the Race and Equity Task Force application process. As Jenny mentioned, 12 is the minimum. We have 20 as the maximum. So if that's something that the city council would like to see more task force members on there, we would like that direction from city council tonight. So I'll close it out just with that ask of council, and then the group will be available for questions.
Real quick, I don't think, so Marianne is essentially part of our task force, but I don't think that we give enough thanks and praise to her for the work she's actually doing. So I'd like to take that time right now and thank you, Marianne.
Yeah. Okay, always good to follow applause, so thank you. Thank you very much. Jenny and Jeff and Terry, thanks so much, and Marianne, thank you too. So we will open it up to questions and start with Councilor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I when I was reading through this memo about how much time and how often you guys are meeting and how much energy and effort you're putting into this, I was really blown away. And I just, please tell the whole task force, thank you so very much. It's important work, but it's also hard work, and your dedication throughout the whole year to maintain that and to move forward is greatly appreciated. So thank you. I absolutely support you guys getting more people on your task force. And but my question to the task force is, do you feel now that you've been here and have been doing work and you've worked you're almost at the end of your first 3 topics, do you feel like there is a need for some sort of alignment? Do you need your mission maybe better defined or differently defined? Do you need your tasks maybe more clarified? Or, you know, it was all brand new, and we knew that, and you know, was put together relatively quickly, and it was one of those where you had to hit the ground running. And so now that you have that, you know, that work behind you, is there, in the space that you're in, are there things that you need moving forward that would make this work not necessarily easier, but just more efficient and more effective?
I think that we're getting into a groove in terms of getting the work done. And I do think that between all of the task force members, we really did come up with a pretty solid agenda. You have to remember that the first few months we spent learning about the city processes and meeting people, which is great and it was essential, but we really didn't get work done. We also had to lay foundations around how are we going to function, so we did have to spend some time writing up bylaws and that kind of thing. So by the time we really got started, I'd say we were, what do you guys think, 6 months down the road, something like that. Yeah. But on this first set of reports, first 3 subjects, I also think I agree that we were a little bit slower, and I think most of the group seems to agree that we'll be, I don't want to say twice as fast, but we'll be much quicker with this second round, because we kind of do have our feet under us. And the last thing I would want to say is that though we've always appreciated the fact that the city has come to us with requests around proclamations on holidays and that kind of thing. Those really, we don't really see those as kind of the core of what we're supposed to be doing, and because those requests are kind of late in coming and they're rushed, we don't feel like we can do them justice, and also they kind of fall outside the bounds of what we've been asked to do. So that I would say that would be one thing that I would kind of take off of our plate. We're also a little worried about that looking like us kind of rubber stamping things, and we definitely don't want to do that. You know, we want to give, if we're going to do something, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I think everybody agreed that we really want to put 100% of our effort into it. So if we're going to talk about, you know, some holiday or some celebration of people of color, we don't want to just talk about it in one council meeting. We want to really dig into it, talk about the whole history of that event. You know, we want to be part of an educational force in the city, and a force that does things so that people can be confident that, again, we're not just rubber stamping things.
Well, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jenny.
I just wanted to add one thing to this, to kind of your point in question and something that Jeff said. The majority of our work has been remote. And so we also feel strongly about getting together as a group. You know, as you all know, you work great in person as a group, and that's when minds can come together and ideas can be shared. And so to add to that momentum and getting our feet under us that I think we have or feeling now, we will start meeting in person again, and I think that there's just a whole slew of good things that come out of that. So I do feel like that we're on a good roll, and momentum will be building.
Sure, great. And I just want to be really clear. I think that the work that you've done in this last year has been a giant undertaking. I don't feel like it's happening slowly by any means at all. I guess I just was kind of asking, like, do you feel like the direction you had initially is still kind of the direction that you're headed? And have there been any in or out roads that you're like, well, we would like to take that up, but we don't feel like that was the direction we were given? And so, you know, which may be something you take back to the committee and think around that. And I hear what you're saying about the proclamation stuff. So I appreciate that. Again, thank you so much for all of your work.
Thank you. Councilor Nosler Beck, and then Councilor Dozeman, and then Councilor Weaver.
Thanks, Jeff, Jenny, and Terry, and Marianne for all of your work. This is just incredible. We really gave you the task of figuring it out, and you really found a path forward, and you did it in a really inclusive way. And like Councilmember Happy said, that's hard work. These aren't always, I think they're rarely comfortable conversations, and everybody who's at the table, we're trying to give a voice to. And I've gotten really incredible feedback from some of the people I know who participated in the task force of just how much leadership and work is going into this from you three and Marianne. So thank you so much. I had a couple of things that I just wanted to bring up. One, it's so important that this work continues to be accessible, and we all know that participating in extracurricular work outside of your work, if we have the right people at the table, is hard to do. We probably aren't hearing from some of the working parents who are in that 50 to 120% AMI that we were talking about earlier today. They probably don't have the bandwidth to do potentially in-person meetings. Maybe, I think we need to get creative. There is some accessibility that comes with Zoom as well, or virtual. I don't want to just exclude any of those platforms, but virtual meetings. So I'd like to, if we are going to offer in person, I just know that as a parent, it would be really hard for me to make 2 meetings a month in person, so can we offer hybrid potentially? Also, I did get some feedback from some of the task force members that it was a lot of meetings for them to make it to. And so as I realize we're building something here, but also just if there is opportunity to, have a couple of Thursdays off or things like that, with some heads up, that could probably help with some of the retention. Just some feedback there. If we are going to be bringing on new board members, as you mentioned, Jeff, there was so much that went into those first 6 months of digging into what the city's up to and how you all are going to interact. It's probably going to be for new new task force members, pretty intensive onboarding process. And so just want to make sure that everybody's realizing that that could be an important part so that they can hit the ground running. So, hi, Marianne. Sorry. But I think if folks and if council is going to be out trying to help recruit for some of this, it'd be great to just know that they'd have that onboarding process and be caught up to speed on things. Lastly, and I want to give you all a chance to respond to these things that I just said, but I do have one more thing I wanted to mention. So should I just get through my list, or should we? I'll just keep going. Okay. The last thing, Jeff, really appreciated what you said about council, coming to the task force for specific asks as it relates to like months or heritage months or things like that. But My question is, so we know your priorities coming up, like housing, like property and housing and that type of thing. How, and you may not have the answer right now, but how does the council interact with the task force when we have things that are coming to council that we would like the task force to review? So, for example, when we do get, just because this was our presentation tonight, but like we get this housing study from the Community First Foundation, how do we refer that to the task force or make sure that you're getting the same information that we're getting, and we're working together on, you know, that policy? Or I remember it might have been almost, it seems like months and months ago, but we had it was kind of like a gas tax. I'm totally oversimplifying this, but it came up that we would like to refer that to the task force to review it. And I don't think that's what the task force was set up to do, but it would be something down the road that we would like to refer things to the task force to help us have that equity lens like you were discussing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's reasonable at some point, but, you know, one of the reasons that we're working in this vein is that, you know, we're trying to take the 20-year, you know, our goal is 20 years out, right? Because I think everybody agrees that we're not going to get there next year. So we've always tried to keep our eye out in the distance. And with the, excuse me, the requests that have come, they're usually kind of very late. And one thing that we've talked about is that we want to also provide you as city council, as, you know, city officials, to feel prepared and to feel informed about equity, right? Like if the idea is that there's always going to be a task force that that reviews this kind of thing, then I think that we're in some sense heading in the wrong direction, right? Our job is to help all of you, to help everybody in the city of Wheat Ridge become more informed, become more self-critical, and to become more aware of all of the issues around, you know, race and equity that we're blind to a lot of the time. So I think that one of the reasons that at least I personally have always I've been hesitant to jump in on those things is because we are slowing ourselves down on those long-term goals just so that we can review this one thing, right? And so I want to make sure that we keep supporting those long-term goals, and that all of you, that our city is part of that set of goals, right? If we don't affect Patrick, what are we doing, right? If we don't give you the tools to move forward yourselves, then, right?
Yeah, and I totally appreciate that and hear you and appreciate the long-term goal. But when the council's priorities we're coming up on a decision, just to use like the housing one again, where that's also something that you're working on at the same time, and we're working to hopefully create some type of policy that aligns. I also don't want to miss that opportunity, is what I'm wanting to know how we can coordinate. And it might not be an answer tonight, but just to make sure that right hand's talking to the left on that one.
So I would say when those things fit is what I think you're getting at. I don't think that, you know, if it fits within one of the parameters that we're working on that year, I think it's absolutely necessary to maybe bring us in with a partner or whomever to kind of talk through that. So if I understand what you're saying, when it's appropriate, should we be involved in that? Now, I would say right now, yes.
Thank you. Councilor Dozeman.
Thank you. And I wanted to reiterate the thanks to the task force as a whole. I mean, the amount of sheer work that you're doing is pretty incredible. And so thank you all for your dedication and time. So I do have a couple of questions. I would support increasing the number of people on the task force since you've lost a few members. But my first question is whether you feel, as Councilmember Nasser-Beck had mentioned, you know, it would be a pretty robust onboarding to start out on. So do you think that it'll help you to add members just to kind of divvy out the work a little bit more, or do you think it would hinder the progress that you've already made by trying to catch them up?
I think it's a good question. I think within, you know, our kind of like learning curve that we all have had, and everyone's had a little bit of a different learning curve, and understanding that a new task force member would have that learning curve plus 10 probably at least, you know, just, you know, hitting the ground running with, you know, during a time that we're really, we feel like we've gotten a little momentum and we'll continue that momentum. I think that would really kind of depend on the person almost. And I think, you know, part of the beauty of this task force is that you all did such a great job of recruiting us, you know, and we are super involved and concerned and want to see it succeed. You know, so that's maybe something that we should talk about. I don't know. Do you all have any thoughts on that as well? Because I do see it being, I see both sides. I see, you know, it being beneficial to have more members because we can then get more work done. But there is also that's painful to try to catch up on something that we already have been working on.
I think my concern would stem from whether the nature of the group might be changed by a different dynamic or somebody coming in and having different goals than what you've already accomplished. So that's just something to consider. But if you all agree that you need more members, I will definitely support that.
Well, you know, my own personal view is just that more voices is probably better. You know, because we are trying to do something with such a huge scope. Like the more voices you hear, probably better. But in terms of ramping people up, if we were talking about replacing the entire task force, then yeah, I'd say we'd definitely be slowing down. But we're actually just talking about, you know, bringing people in strategically with the people that are already there, with the experience they already have. I don't think getting them up to speed. I agree that there'll be a learning curve, but I don't think it'll be as long as the one we had, right? So I think it's a good thing. I think it would be a good thing.
Just as a follow-up on some of the topics that have been touched. So we have, like you said, it's a very large scope that we've tasked you with, and honestly, the group has made more headway in that than I would say council gave you direction to do. So thank you for kind of outlining that and putting a template together to follow. But moving forward to address some of those policy issues that are going to be coming up. And I completely understand where you're coming from as far as like you're here to kind of guide and create a platform for all of us to understand and be more like self-educated and knowledgeable moving forward about how certain policies may affect people of color. But I also think that, you know, and we had talked about this at one point of, you know, should the task force become something that's more of a board or commission as well, that meets on a regular basis and maybe reviews policy. And I don't know if that's maybe a direction that you see the task force moving into after you've kind of wrapped up and reported back to us, or if, you know, it's something where like kind of looked over the work of the last 50 plus years, and you're gonna let us sink or swim.
That's a huge question in a way. I think that, I don't want to do too many spoilers here, but I think that you're going to find that in the report, there's a recommendation that the city hire a full-time person to do this work, to supervise this work. And so I think that would be our number one way to ensure that the city continues this work. So should the task force become kind of a board? I'm not sure. I think that the task force needs to finish the work that it started. And I think that we'll find together what the answer to that is. But we do believe that at least that one position is really critical. I mean, if you're serious about getting the money right in the city, you hire an accountant, right? Well, if we're serious about getting equity right in the city, then we need to hire that position.
Thank you, Councilor Weaver.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, all of you, to the task force for all of your work. And I don't have specific questions, but just to follow up on some of the comments that have been made, I really appreciate all of your voices on sort of thinking about what the task force is in this first couple years, because groups evolve, and should we, does it continue, or is it a different recommendation? So please know that as much as the work that you're doing, those thoughts and recommendations around what we do now versus what we sort of need in the future is really important to us. So I just want to thank you all for thinking about the efficacy of how we continue to do the work, and that it will continue to change, to your point. And I forgot my other question, so thank you all very much for presenting tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been said again and again tonight, just extraordinary and profound deep thanks for your time and your experience and your expertise, and not just the three of you, but others of you and the spouses who lose their spouses on Thursday nights. It's a lot of work, and you guys are doing a lot of good and hard work in our community, so just really want to thank you. A couple of things that kind of come up. Sorry, my computer just decided to screen share, shut its screen down as I started talking. So a couple things as this conversation's evolving tonight around sort of the scope of work that you're doing. When this was first chartered in September of 2020, which seems like a really long time ago, the consensus that came forward was to review and recommend updates related to, but not limited to, city charter, a handful of things, and issue findings and recommendations in a report to the city no later than September 30th, 2021. Looking back, completely unreasonable expectation and deadline on our part. And, in part because you guys didn't even start for another 6 months. And the good work you did the first 6 months of getting your bearings and not hurrying that. I know one of the real weaknesses in a lot of systems is rushing. Rushing is a form of power. And so I really appreciate that you guys aren't rushing this good work, because it's the first time it's being done. So with that in mind, I think, I came into tonight with, thinking that, we were coming up on a final report, because that was kind of where this started. And so, the ask about, more committee members, I'm like, well, why would they need more committee members? Because, they're coming towards a final report, and like, that is, not the process that you're doing, because you're doing the process the way it needs to be done, which is thorough and thoughtfully and in an inclusive way. So I'm saying all of that I'm also feeling the tension between, a task force is formed, to look at something and bring forward a report. And I'm aware of the opportunity costs when we haven't had those recommendations come forward yet, because that information is what the city's eager to work with. So I love the idea of, as you're taking your 3 topics and bringing forward reports and recommendations, as those come out, so I think we're all just, we want to start working with it. So, but I'm also, as this work is evolving, there are several questions tonight about functioning as an advisory role, which is very different than a task force. A task force, you guys are kind of working independently, and rightfully so, to not be encumbered by, the things that are popping up at our end that we're like, oh, hey, here's this idea, and you guys have great capacity and experience to, so I don't think there's an answer tonight, but as the work moves on and as the city is increasing the need for advisory stuff, I personally, as someone who was raised by parents who are constantly on task force and boards and this and that, I don't think task force should be advisory boards. Like, I think they're very different functions. And on the other hand, you guys singularly in our city right now have like this wealth of insight and experience and determination and passion around this. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think there's maybe a conversation that comes again sooner than later about like what does advisory function look like, because questions around housing and things we're talking about, as a city we have an appetite for knowing how to do better around those things in real-ish time. But it shouldn't deter from the slow, careful work you guys are doing. So it's less of a question and more just sort of an observation of how time has changed all of our processes. And I just want to kind of state it and be sensitive to that. Because I realized I didn't know what expectation to come in with tonight, because I'm like a performative person, and I was like, oh, we're going to get close to this. So I don't know what the answer is, but I feel like as time goes on, we may need to explore that a little bit. And as far as that relates to bringing on more people, my experience is 12 to 15 people is about as functional of a group as you get. Just having, when we did NRS, like we had a ton of people, and there was, some people attritioned off, but you always get that core working group. And my experience has been like 9 to 13 people are your like passionate core, but you guys will lose more people. So if you think that you have, and it sounds like another year of work ahead of you, by all means you should, get more people into support, because you will lose more people. It's how community volunteer groups work. So I don't really have too many questions, other than I guess I'm just kind of putting out there, feeling the tension between task force and advisory. And you guys are doing a lot of work, and looking forward to the reporting so that we can start taking action on the hard work that you're doing. That's one of the things that's really important to me. And then and I said this last time, just to remind you, you guys are important task force representatives in our community, but you're also still our constituents. So as issues are coming up, please reach out to us and let us know as citizens and neighbors and residents of our community. Like, we want to hear from you on the issues that are important to you too. You don't have to only communicate to us as a task force. You are still our neighbors and people we respect and want to hear from. So, so I don't really have anything. I'm just kind of wanting to share those thoughts. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Councilor States.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again all for your work. I think it's been said several times, but I don't think it can be said enough. Putting all this work in 2 meetings a month is for completely free, right? Is pretty fantastic. So thank you guys for what you guys are doing. And I completely support as well adding reinforcements to the task force, because if you've got another year's worth of work ahead of you, like Ms. Holteen said, and being a part of that NRS, you're probably going to lose more people just through basic attrition. My question to you guys is there a specific skill set? You mentioned some of the topics that are coming up. You said health, affordable housing, things like that. Is there a specific skill set or anything like that in the members that you want to add? Or is there a skill set that you're lacking at this point? Because I know that when we originally put this group together, it had a very diverse background, and you may have lost, all of the single parents, or, so is there some sort of background, is there some sort of skill set that would help you guys moving forward?
So luckily with this first round, we actually were able to kind of, get introduced to the main players and kind of get in there with them and kind of do some research and reading and, I'm going to speak with my group. We were able to go right to the defenders, the prosecutors, the judges and everything and kind of ask those questions out loud. I'm sure education and Jeff had a pretty good feel for the police department. I think others have done some work before. So we kind of got lucky. These next three, again, I personally work in the kind of generational second gen, kind of getting people to sustainable situation. So, but that's not to say we're not going to need someone who knows more than me. So I think as we go along, as long as the people in the city keep introducing themselves to us and giving us overviews of what it is that they do, it kind of helps us better understand how to get to what we're trying to get at. Does that answer your question?
I think it does, yeah.
Given that we're looking at mental health, having people that, mental health professionals would actually be helpful.
Now, is that just mental health or is it health in general?
Well, where do you separate the two, right?
Well, exactly, but,
Yeah.
okay. So
I don't think that we would need to make that distinction, but definitely, mental health has been a huge part of what we've seen come back in all of our discussions.
My last thing, and it kind of goes along with what Ms. Holteen said, and I think what Ms. Nosserbeck were getting at, or was getting back earlier. I agree, the task force is not an advisory board. That's completely different. And possibly, maybe one of the recommendations you guys can bring forward here is, not necessarily now, but obviously in the future, is how do we move forward long-term? Maybe that's a full-time person working for the city. Maybe that's creating an equity diversity board or commission that is an advisory. But maybe you guys can kind of look into that as you're moving forward as to how long-term we can have some other views other than just council and staff on some of our ordinances.
Thank you. I've got Ms. Weaver, and then I'm back to Ms. Dozman. Oh, I thought you were waving your hand for a totally different reason. I'm sorry. Ms. Dozman.
Thanks. So this question, I guess, would be more directed at staff. How would we open this back up? Would we just have the same application as before, and it would be like a blind?
Yeah, I believe we have all that set, and shouldn't be too difficult to get back out on social, and we'll send you guys some information you can share with your constituents. Marianne gave a thumbs up.
Good. So, there's additional questions for our guests, our task force directors. For my 2 cents, I'm kind of surprised that you're not down to the 3 of you, because it sounds to me, I'll be honest, it sounds to me like much more than 2 meetings a month when you sort of said, and then we've got in small print, we've got a committee meeting to go along with it. So, those meetings tend to grow in frequency. So I want to, well, they're watching right now. I'm sure it turned in 100%. So I want to thank you for the work that you've done, for being with us tonight to present. It's sort of it's a big task, and it was a task that was not clearly defined, and I think you've done a really arduous and very good task in sort of getting it narrowed into focus groups and getting a direction going so that you can really climb on board this next year. Are there members, let me ask, are there members of the community that you've sort of identified as potential candidates that you might be seeking out, and don't want to get ahead of the game? So, thank you. So, Councilor Holteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember we had a pretty lengthy discussion last time about the application process. So I do appreciate that that's already in place. It's been our experience lately that recruiting applicants for things is taking time and considerable like coordinated communication. So what is a timeline that feels reasonable? Like, I just want to sort of set expectations about how long we think outreach is and what that looks like. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm asking
As a-
staff too if they have any insight too.
Jenny's spitballing with end of May, so we're going to go with end of May.
Oof, okay. Yeah, I mean, I know it takes a little bit to ramp up communications and to really communicate that out. And then I think the second part of that is council reviewed those applications and appointed them. And they were blind. We were just looking at, qualifications. And I'm assuming that we would be appointing them again this time. Is that correct? Would that be?
Go ahead.
That's really up to council, I would think, at this point. Since you do have established task force, I think an option is to let them appoint at this point, or they could come back to council. I think that's really up to you.
I would definitely support the task force. You guys have a better sense of the needs that would support you. Is that, want to have thoughts on that? Is that a thumbs up? I'm looking for a consensus on having, okay.
Okay. Councillor Noslerbeck.
Just with the task force that we currently have, just, since we don't really have a term that's ending here, but this is going longer than we anticipated, will you all be talking to the current task force members and seeing if they are interested in staying on for this longer commitment? I mean, I'm just saying that because then we may, I'd rather when we're doing the recruitment, we're recruiting for what we know we need to be recruiting for instead of losing someone right after we have just recruited other people on board.
Yeah, so that's tantamount to asking if we should infer to them that they might leave. But I will put that on the agenda and talk with them. Thursday is our next meeting, so.
Sorry, Terry, just really quick. Councilor Noslerbeck, you brought up a good point about offering a hybrid meeting format, and I just want to make sure that that's a part of we'll always offer that, because I do think that does limit a lot of folks' ability to meet. And while in person is great, it's also great to just have folks there if they happen to be online. I just wanted to say that I don't want that to limit anyone. So thank you for bringing that up. Just wanted to.
Councillor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question for those listening. What is the just kind of average time commitment per, I know it's 2 days or 2 Thursdays a month, but what's like the, say preparation time before the meeting and then the meeting itself and any additional subcommittee meetings? Just a kind of rough ballpark.
So as we kind of mentioned, one of our meetings every month is currently a presentation from the city from a different department. So we're learning about all the different departments and inner workings. Those meetings are right at, we're saying hour and a half. Yeah. So there's not necessarily a ton of prep for those. There's usually some work, note-taking or whatever they do after that. But then the next meeting, currently in our current iteration configuration, is our small group work. That's where, more of the time comes in. And so we're doing, whether we're working in our group or reaching out to folks or compiling notes, whatever, I'd say probably at least 2 hours for that second meeting. So all total, what's that, 3.5 per month, 3.5 to 4? Except for when we have big projects. Are we getting email?
Right, well, but for instance, for our subcommittee, we've actually been meeting weekly to try and get ourselves caught up and meet the end of the month deadline. So the last 2 months, we're really talking about somewhere in the range of about 13 hours a month minimum. That doesn't include, for instance, above and beyond that, I sat down and went through police policies, and so did each of our other members, so.
Thank you.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Thanks. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think it would be very important to fill people in on what the commitment is, when we're trying to recruit people for this task force, and that might be helpful. And also, I know we don't have templates or any answers yet or anything. I'm just wondering how the city's doing. Are we kind of like fair, need improvement? Kind of where are we?
So I would have to answer that in the context of who you're comparing the city to. The bigger cities are going to have, for example, they're going to have someone probably on staff that, as Jeff alluded to, that we're going to recommend that actually doing this work. So in my opinion, Reed Ridge is kind of catching up. So would that be a fair statement, you think? So I think you're kind of catching up, but what do you got?
That's something. But seriously, credit to you all for listening to our residents, for the creation of this. And I think there's still a lot of cities that aren't as far along as we are. So there's both sides, obviously. There's a lot of work to do, though.
Okay.
All right. Good, Councillor Hulteen.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to get back to seeking some consensus and guidance for these guys. So it sounds like we've got consensus for them to reopen their application process to seek out up to a full 20 people on the committee, consensus for that. And then do we have consensus to allow them to review and select their future task force members? Wonderful. So I think that's all, and we're looking for roughly sometime in May to have those applications come in so you guys can review those. And then this isn't a consensus thing, but I'd like us as a council, and I'll work with Patrick on this to, figure out when we need to have the next conversation about what the evolution of the task force is, so that you're in the best, service to the city as you feel fit, and so that we're able to, put into action your work as effectively as possible. So just tremendous thank you for everything and for being here tonight.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Jenny and Terry and Jeff and the rest of the members of the committee. We've got other members of the committee here, so thank you all very much for joining us. We appreciate the work that you do and look forward to another report. All right. Thanks so much. All right. That concludes our discussion on the two agenda items. We will go now to staff reports and Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just an update this evening and looking for some direction and maybe consensus tonight from City Council. But wanted to give you an update on our city facility assessment and our current space needs here at our city facilities. If y'all remember, we discussed with you in the past, our current municipal facilities are nearing or have exceeded their useful life, and we're running out of Band-Aids really to make things better and to continue modifying our buildings for our current staffing needs. As directed by City Council during the 2022 budget process, we've issued a request for qualifications for a facilities assessment. and master plan to plan for our long-term facility needs. I think we narrowed it down to 3, if that sounds right. And we have those, we're reviewing those proposals this Thursday, so hopefully we'll have somebody on board soon to look at our long-term needs and do an assessment of our current facilities. We've also been negotiating a short-term lease, as I mentioned to you several weeks ago, for additional office space with Foothills Regional Housing to occupy their building that they recently vacated at 45th and Wadsworth. And actually, Tim Rogers is in the background. He's the real estate representative for Foothills, and Ali Sheck and I think Karen O'Donnell is on the online. Have been both very active in working with Tim on a lease. This lease would resolve our immediate need for additional office space and would also eliminate significant spending that was budgeted in this year's budget for Band-Aid repairs we had planned for this building and the Parks Forestry open space building off of 44th Avenue. So the additional space would also allow us to consolidate what we're calling right now, for lack of better terms, kind of our city's community neighborhood services programs. And I mentioned that to you all individually in phone calls when I called you several weeks ago about Local Works and some of the changes that may be happening there with their staffing. But we would like to use this opportunity, which is a very great opportunity that came to us because of the change in Foothills and their office space. But we'd like to use this space as a place for better collaboration amongst those staff who work in our community and neighborhood services. Specifically, those would include our Parks, Forestry, and Open Space administrative staff, our homeless navigation program, our sustainability program, economic development, our neighborhood planners who primarily work on the Let's Talk program today, our GIS systems, and as well as some IT and HR support. We would have the ability to offer some in-person services at this building. It's a beautiful building, about 8,600 square feet. There are, I think, 2 large conference spaces that would be open for public use, which is great. We don't have much space in the city for those types of gatherings. There's a lot of domino benefits also to this. Moving staff out of the Parks, Forestry, and Open Space building off of 44th would allow that building to be opened up for additional storage space. We do have lacking storage space throughout the city, and it's mainly right now used for a lot of recreation and Parks and Rec type storage. And then also the barn that's in front of the rec center is full of storage also, and there's been some talk amongst a few council members and staff of potentially using that, repurposing that barn for a more community use for whatever. I know there's a couple of you looking at me. I think you have ideas, but I know our Parks and Rec director has thoughts about that too, and really repurposing that barn so that there's a better community use. But right now it's full of stuff. So we could move that stuff to the Parks, Forestry, Open Space building. This move would also allow some movement in this building, especially in the police department. It would allow them to expand out and provide them more space. They're really packed in today. You know, the lease space really offers a positive approach to employee morale and retention. We've been band-aiding this building for many years, and I think we've converted every storage space, every janitor closet to an office, and a lot of our IT staff have been working out of server rooms, which is not appropriate. So this has been a long-term issue that we've really made do for many, many years, and it's really time. The property would allow us to expand services in the future. You're all very aggressive about wanting to do more things in our community, and to do that, we need more space. And as I mentioned, I had phone calls with y'all several weeks ago. Local Works is recruiting a new executive director at the time, and there's some discussion about maybe the city taking on some of that programming in-house, which would require additional space. So we've negotiated a lease with Jim, and if you have any questions for him, But right now, we're looking at a 5-year lease, which would commence on the earlier date of June 15th or when the facility has sufficient connectivity to meet our networking needs. We thought with, and Allie, you can come to the table if you want to talk through this too, but we thought we had access available in April with CenturyLink, and once we had more detailed meetings with them, and they actually brought their people that do the work, the techs, they said, we can't do that. And so right now, they said they could provide us service by mid-June, so we couldn't move in until around that time if council gives us that direction. The total estimated cost for this year, which we have in the budget, as I mentioned, we had about $335,000 budgeted in this year's budget to make some Band-Aid improvements to this building, to the Parks Forestry Open Space building. We wouldn't have to make those improvements if we had some new office space. So this year's costs are about $287,000. That would include a refundable security deposit of $5,000. It would include 7 months rent, the initial cost of furniture, various IT expenses, janitorial, and some other miscellaneous furniture. As I mentioned, we have the money available in our CIP budget, so we don't need any funding this year. The estimated annual budget for the 5-year lease would be about $220,000 a year, and there's a 3% increase in the rent annually. We did look around the Wheat Ridge area and the metro area on lease rental rates, lease rates for office spaces such as this. Foothills originally wanted $22 a square foot. We were able to negotiate down to $18.80 a square foot, approximately. It would be a gross lease, so it would include, this cost would include utilities, maintenance on the building. The only thing the city would pay for is janitorial, and I think our staff would take care of snow removal. Is that right?
I think that's to be determined based on what we view as building maintenance. Building maintenance is there, so I think that's just something we'll need to work out in the final lease.
So I'm sorry, there's no more information in your packet this evening, but this is kind of timely, and we wanted to at least get this in front of you. If you need more information in another study session, we can do that, but wanted to get some initial reaction from you this evening, and at minimum, approval to submit the security deposit with Foothills. Otherwise, they're gonna cut us loose very soon and open up their leasing again, I think. And yeah, Allie, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would just say, Mr. Goff, also that another important step in getting consensus is pulling the trigger on the lumen, CenturyLink lumen, on that, the connectivity. And in order, they're 90 to 120 days. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Oslerbeck.
Just to understand what building we're talking about,
Yeah,
it's the one right behind Pep Boys?
Correct.
And
45th
like the
and
Lutheran
Wadsworth,
Church over
sorry.
there? Okay.
Yes.
I Googled it.
Yeah.
That's the one, Councilor Holteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I am very supportive of the city moving forward with this. It seems like a timely and a good opportunity for us to solve many, many problems, whereas the initially budgeted stuff would just be Band-Aiding a few problems. I think the cascading improvement for storage and our ability to function and serve our employees so that they feel good about where they're working sounds like a good opportunity for the city. So I definitely support it, and I'm glad that we're able to be entertaining that now.
Additional discussion. Councilor Ohm.
I don't know if you can answer this, but thank you, Mayor. But one question I have is, what is the money for what we're doing here? Would that be, what could you do as far as the police department? Could they, and for instance, I know there's a pretty good percentage of female officers in the facilities. The changing room is proportionally very small to the men's.
It is, and we're getting more and more female officers, which is awesome. But yeah, the facilities that they have are not adequate compared to the male officers at this point. We don't have the money that we have budgeted this year didn't necessarily address that problem. It needs to. What, if we move forward with this, what issues it would address in the police department right now, we're looking at potentially our code enforcement unit moving over to community development, and that allows their traffic team, right, and their sergeant group to expand. Right now, they're kind of on top of each other up there with very minimal cost. Yes, the facilities are, you may have had more conversations with the chief than I have on that, I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, and Karen, feel free to weigh in here too, but I think the discussion around the locker room issue in particular, Councilor Ullman, thank you for bringing that up, is that it's, you know, the council directed us during the budget conversations to move forward with the facilities master plan, because what we have been doing out of need is just sort of trying to chip away at little things to keep us going, and that will be a huge and very, very expensive project if it's determined through this more strategic look. We do. If it's determined through this more strategic look that we need to be really focusing on a different facility. And I don't know, I'm looking at the screen, Karen, if you have anything to add.
I really don't. I mean, that's accurate in terms of every conversation I've had, Allie. Thank you.
Well, and that's a good point, Mr. Ohm. I think, you know, again, going back to the Band-Aids we've been putting on, and, you know, that this lease opportunity is a short-term opportunity, and that's why we're doing this facility assessment that you all asked us to do and approved to look long-term. That's why this lease is, you know, it's a 5-year. We hope, you know, in a 5-year period, maybe we have some long-term plans with other facilities in the city. And unfortunately, it's not going to address, these actions aren't going to address all the issues that we're struggling with at this building. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And I think it's something that maybe we should still look at, because we are getting more and more female officers, and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and that could affect retention.
Yeah.
The other question I have is, I'm sure you probably had some discussion with some of the staff. Are they generally in favor of relocating?
They're thrilled.
Yes.
Okay.
I was a little nervous about it too. Mariana would be one of them. The building's beautiful. And especially with the focus that we're working on, really pulling these folks together that work really closely together today anyway. Very collaboratively, I can't say that word. We're very lucky, and I think it's really going to increase the synergies in those groups. And yeah, everybody, I think.
Oh my gosh.
You did all the tours with them, so you.
And Karen, again, if you want to weigh in on the PFAS piece.
It's adjacent to Abelbacher Park. What's better than that
Tennis
for our
courts.
Parks, Forestry, and Open Space team?
I don't know how many of you have been into the Parks, Forestry, and Open Space building, and we had $175,000, I think, budgeted to do some very minimal improvements to that. But I mean, there's stuff in there. They're not. There's this. I think a thought that but they're outdoors all day. They're not. There's a number of staff that are office bound in that building. It's just not adequate. It's just not okay. It's not okay. And these, for this move right here shows that particular team, we love and appreciate you. And while we want to be, we're stewards of public money, it's also, we need to balance all of these things, but retaining our staff, we have to focus on that as well. So to answer and that's, again, another great question. Yeah, we've had nothing but just absolute enthusiasm and thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councilor Hoppy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify what we're looking for in direction, because we don't have a memo to refer to. So what are we?
Yeah, I mean, if council's comfortable tonight without having a more detailed study session and seeing the actual lease agreement, again, Tim's here if you have any questions for him. But the mayor would need to sign a lease agreement. If you're comfortable this evening giving us consensus, the mayor to do that, we would love that. But again, at minimum, at least to submit the $5,000 security deposit.
And the Illumicons are?
That's moved. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, thank you. If we need to pull the trigger on that tomorrow. Really.
Illumicon?
Lumen, Lumen, is the new CenturyLink, the new name for CenturyLink.
Thank you. Do we then have, let's see if we have a hand for consensus to authorize the city to move forward with the lease and to move forward with Lumen to get some phone and data. Okay, looks like we do.
Great, thank you so much.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
That's all I got.
That's it for staff reports?
That is.
Okay, well then let's go to elected officials matters, and because I don't have good eyes in the back of my head, I want to start with our clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing tonight.
Thank you very much. Because I do have eyes in front of my head, I'll look for hands from our counselors. Counselor Noslerback?
I just was looking at future agenda items, and I know that we have canceled March 14th because of the MLC conference. I am going to be out of town because my kids are on spring break the 21st through the 28th. Their school isn't in session on the 28th either, so I won't be in attendance, but I wanted to see if it was possible for me to participate. I don't have to actually participate in the meeting, but at least watch and be a part of the legislative preview meeting on the 21st, and then I'll just not be here on the 28th. So.
Yeah, we're all set for virtual, so,
Okay.
and you can participate if that's what you choose to. It's legal to vote through the hybrid format, so.
Did we decide that? I didn't know we could vote on.
Yeah, I think Mr. Dahl said that. Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, I mean, I think Ms. Hutchinson did one hybrid, and she was allowed to vote.
The 28th I will be out.
Okay.
But the 21st I'll be here then.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dozman, and then Counselor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to update the public about something very, very fun and exciting. We have a new private neighborhood magazine called Wheat Ridge Living that was recently launched, and they're going to be celebrating their launch with a ribbon cutting by the Chamber of Commerce on this Thursday, at 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Clancy. So I'm inviting everybody to come and join the fun. I got a preview of the magazine, and it looks really awesome, so I'm excited to have that in our community.
Thank you. Counselor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two things. One is I just love the new pictures. The photographs are so engaging and colorful, and it was just a really great freshening up of our chambers. So whoever did that, thank you.
Karen O'Donnell and Sarah Spalding.
Yeah.
Karen, Sarah, really, I love that. The second thing is I just, spring is the time of year where things start to pop up, and most of it's good. We are open for business. There are so many businesses opening in our city, and it is just really exciting. Some are planned, some are opening. I am surprised when I drive down 38th and I'm seeing new businesses up, and I just want to really recognize that that's pretty extraordinary to me, given, we've had a rough couple of years economically, and I love that we're a city where people are wanting to bring their good ideas, and there's a lot of good stuff in District 2 that's opening, but I'm really proud of us and excited, and that's a lot of good work on behalf of our city leadership, and yeah, I'm just really excited to eat out a lot. Specifically, Yak and Yeti opened recently, so very excited to see that. So anyway, I just want to celebrate all the businesses that are deciding to call Wheat Ridge home.
Terrific. Counselor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a comment that I'm very pleased that I don't even know what you call these things, the traffic things where it says slow down. I don't know what that is, but they have them on 32nd Avenue. I was at a stop sign. I watched 5 cars go by. Okay, so it goes 39, slow down, 38, slow down, 35, slow down. They were all going fast, okay? The speed limit's 30, all right? So, and then also there's new pedestrian crossing signs at 32nd and Pierce. The hand ones, the orange guy, and that, they never had those there before. So I heard just on the news tonight about traffic, And I saw what's been going on at 17th and Irving over by Sloan's Lake and the number of wrecks that they have had over there, people running stop signs and things. The conversation was about it seems to be better to have smaller streets without the lines in the middle. People seem to go faster when there's the lines that are in the middle, like the yellow line or something. I just thought that was kind of interesting. So we want our traffic to slow down, eh? A little bit. Thanks.
All right, additional elected officials matters? Mr. Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question. I noticed that on the north side of Crown Hill, that area that I talked to Patrick about has been filled in. What is the, after they filled it in, what do they do? That I seen cones around it the other day.
Yeah,
this
they're
weekend.
trying to let us settle, I think, before cars actually park on it to harden maybe. So what Mr. Ohm's speaking about is the stretch on the north side of Crown Hill, right on 32nd, and the entrance into Crown Hill, which is not a formal entrance. Lakewood got the formal entrance, Lakewood. And I live right by there, so I see it all the time. And when I had my dog, you'd walk through there, and when it's muddy like this, it gets really muddy. People park in there, it gets ruts, and Mr. Stites also got an email from a resident about that area. So we're looking at several different short-term options to clean that up a little bit, and some potential long-term options. I asked Karen to reach out to Jeffco Open Space to talk about some better parking and entrance on that side of the park. And then just the whole corridor along 32nd Avenue. If you drive down it, you know it gets pretty messy during this time of the year. There's no curb and gutter, so that makes it much worse. That was the long-term solution if we ever wanted to do it. Otherwise, the maintenance is horrible. But another option that we could do, staff's already looking at, is just to extend the pavement out a little bit further on the shoulder, so it's not dirt and mud, and that would help with bicyclists too. And so that would be more of a Band-Aid, if we're talking about Band-Aids. But a curb and gutter project would require probably street width designation and all that good stuff. But if that's something, I think I told Corey, I'm embarrassed when I drive down that road all the time because it's messy, it's muddy, but we can't maintain it when there's no curb and gutter. It's just really hard. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Ohm, but yeah, that's.
No, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Saturday morning is the 12th. It's second Saturday with the mayor, coffee with the mayor at Vinola's Market. Anyone would like to come? 9 o'clock. We're going to meet in real person. I guess that's my words are failing me now. So in real person, maybe that's where we're going next. So, if there's no more business to come before the council, no meeting next week. We'll meet the following week in study session. And everyone, please, we've got some weather coming in, so please take care of your neighbors and shovel your walks and be safe out there and drive very carefully. Thank you. We'll stand adjourned.